นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening. This is the first Zoom session of the Lunar New Year. We had one last month. It's the first one of the normal calendar year, but this is the Lunar New Year, and brought up a few questions from Buddhists about dragons. What are dragons? What's the significance of dragons in Buddhism? Sometimes in Theravada Buddhism, we talk more about nagas, serpent gods, serpent deities. Mahayana Buddhism tends to talk more about dragons, connected more to China, but not exclusively. But in Buddhist cosmology, I think they're considered part of the same realm. Dragons often, they say, live in the sky. Nagas live in the earth, or in rivers or ponds or the sea. Interesting that there are still a number of countries in the world with dragons on their flags, their national flags. So my ancestors come from Wales, and they have a dragon, a red dragon on their national flag. It's a European-style dragon. It's a bit fatter than a Chinese-style dragon, which tends to be long. But still, they're scaly beings, powerful, sometimes breathing fire. So they symbolize power, authority. That's why they have them on flags. Or the flag of Bhutan, Buddhist kingdom of Bhutan, they have a dragon on their flag. A white dragon symbolizes some of the pure energy, pure forces in the world, but also authority, the authority of the country, the king, the government. So traditionally in mythology and history, dragons have a certain role to play, protecting people doing good. They also have their barami, which is often represented as jewelry or a crystal. So like the Bhutanese flag, they have the dragon holds some jewelry. Sometimes a Chinese dragon, you see their dragon will have a crystal or a sphere of crystal emanating light in its mouth. And that symbolizes the goodness, the barami of the dragon. That could be material wealth. So like on a national flag, you might put a dragon because it's representing the government or the king, who is supposed to be powerful, wealthy, material wealth. You know, they're the owner of the kingdom, the ruler of the kingdom. But then there's also the spiritual wealth, which is perhaps more relevant to us. You know, in Buddhism, we talk about spiritual wealth, the qualities of having faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. That's considered a kind of spiritual wealth. Having sila, because sila is something that grounds you in making good karma, protects you when you keep sila, meaning you live in a moral way, you have virtuous behavior of body and speech, you're protected. Your sila protects you from generating bad karma that might come back on you and hurt you. So it's another kind of wealth when you've practiced and gained sila, we say you have sila or gained sila. It's almost like something you own. It's something that is part of your sort of your wealth. And then you have the wealth of chaka, which means like practice of generosity, knowing how to support good causes, so particularly supporting the religion, sangha, but also other good causes in the world, knowing how to support society in general in the sharing what you have, the wealth you have with others, and helping those less fortunate than us, and the sick, the poor, animals, anything. So the quality of chaka, and then the quality of panya. That's the most important of all, because panya means wisdom or insight that can remove suffering from your experience. Helps you to see the path to the end of suffering and remove the obstacles to the path, all the mental defilements, negative qualities. It's wisdom that sees them and removes them from your mind. So that's the greatest wealth. So dragons or nagas, who are often kind of interchangeable, they're used to refer to people who have cultivated themselves spiritually, developed great spiritual wealth, a reserve of good karma that they've developed over many lifetimes, perhaps. So in modern day Thailand, which I tend to know more about Thailand than other places where Buddhists live, there's some monks that are considered to have great barami, a store of barami, meaning they had really strong sila even under difficult circumstances when their lives were threatened or they were in situations where they're tempted to be angry or greedy or corrupt, but they didn't follow those urges. They didn't give in to those urges in those situations. They kept their sila or kept their faith when facing difficulties such as illness or disappointing circumstances. They didn't lose their faith in Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And they kept their generosity of heart, their desire to help others, let go of their greed, their selfishness. And they kept their wisdom. So many monks are referred to like that. They say spiritually wealthy. The ones who are spiritually wealthy don't get angry very easily, or maybe not at all. Somebody who has spiritual wealth, they don't easily anger. They're kind, compassionate, they're generous, they're not stingy. They don't go around just trying to accumulate wealth for the sake of it in the more normal way of the world. Any wealth that comes their way, they tend to give away, give up to others, do things that are beneficial for other people. So they would have the equivalent of the dragon's jewelry or the dragon's crystal, but in terms of spiritual qualities in their citta, in their consciousness. Maybe the ordinary person might not be able to see that or know that. And that's why material wealth is more attractive to the ordinary person in the world, because you can see it, can touch it. So people like gold and silver and jewels and anything that's worth something in material terms, fancy cars and big houses and all kinds of displays of material wealth. We go for that because you can see it. It makes you feel comfortable and secure having that kind of wealth, even though it's temporary, doesn't last. Because you can touch it and see it and feel it, you like it. So the world is going around looking for, people of the world are going around looking for more wealth, looking for land that can produce wealth, looking for knowledge that can produce wealth, and so on. Spiritual wealth is harder to identify. So maybe you have to learn how to meditate a bit and bring your mind to understand more deeply what these different spiritual qualities are in your own experience, and then you might recognize them more in other people, like in teachers, other characters. You can go on hearsay, and often we do rely on hearsay. In the beginning of our practice, we ask our friend, oh, who's a good teacher? Where are the good teachers? Who's enlightened? Who's not enlightened? We ask, and then maybe that leads us somewhere. Some people are kind of lucky. They have a encounter with somebody with spiritual wealth and they feel, oh, this is a very special person. Maybe they feel something, they sense something, or they just hear the right words from that person, very meaningful, powerful words that express expression of that person's wisdom or insight. That can still be true of the Buddha today. Even the Buddha passed away a long time ago, but the words of the Buddha contained in the Tripitaka, the Buddhist scriptures, you can open the Buddhist scriptures, the Pali Canon, read a sutta, and the words of the Buddha are like treasure. We call them treasure, wealth, noble wealth, because just a few words of the Buddha can brighten your mind. They give you clarity, they make sense, and they can be practiced very easily. Maybe some aspects of what the Buddha taught or pointed to are more difficult to practice, but some are very clear and cut through a lot of our delusions. So the Buddha, you might say something like, don't harm others with your speech, your action, because it will come back on you. And that's, at first it's just a word, but if you have been in a situation where you've argued with someone and called them names, been rude to them, aggressive, and then you reflect back, you feel unpleasant in your mind, you feel regret, you feel sad. And you realize, oh, if I'd followed what the Buddha taught, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have said that. And then the Buddha's words become very meaningful to you because you've had a lesson maybe in some aspect of your life. So sometimes you can identify spiritual wealth in people just through their words, sometimes their behavior. When you meet someone, quite often it's a Sangha member, but not always. It can be a lay practitioner as well. And you see them not get angry in a situation where you might feel they should get angry or they would be tempted to be angry. Somebody who's patient and doesn't give up when they have to encounter difficulties like illness or the frustrations of living in the world, living in the world. They don't give up. They keep going. They're patient. They don't give up their faith. They don't give up their effort in the practice. You see that person and you feel, oh, that person has a store of spiritual wealth. So sometimes we see it in people's behavior, sometimes in the words. And if you meditate, occasionally you sort of sense it in your meditation. So many people tell me when they have maybe a vision of a teacher, such as Ajahn or some teacher that seems to have a lot of spiritual wealth, very powerful, compassionate, wise teacher with a pure mind. And people have a dream of them or vision in their meditation sometimes. They feel, oh, this teacher has a lot of something. We call it barami, or spiritual wealth. This is all like the crystal ball in the dragon's mouth or the jewelry that the dragon is holding. The person, we say person with merit, person with good karma, accumulated good karma. That's often reflected in art, isn't it? People, when you paint a picture of the Buddha, you put halo around the Buddha, radiance around the Buddha, or some teacher, sometimes they make the teacher very radiant in artwork. Actually, it's all just emanating from the mind, the pure mind, the well-developed mind of the spiritual seeker, the Dhamma practitioner. Another aspect of dragons is they're fierce, aren't they? They tend to have that fierce eye, fierce look. They sort of emanate power. Probably why people like to have them as emblems, or they make dragon staircases or statues of dragons in different places, sort of protecting a building or protecting somebody, because they're fierce, they're powerful. And the idea is that a dragon or a naga could be the same, is that they use their power or they accumulated qualities of mind, their spiritual wealth, to do good. If they're fierce, well, they're fierce in doing good. Sometimes you have to be fierce with yourself. You have to learn how to combat your own bad habits, your greed, your laziness, your anger. Sometimes you have to be firm or even fierce with yourself because you're getting angry, and you have to tell yourself not to give in to your anger. Or if you are lazy, you have to tell yourself to get up and do something that you can't be bothered to do that you should do. That's often the case with meditation, isn't it? You've got to remind yourself, get up and do your meditation, not stop lying about being lazy. So sometimes we have to be fierce with ourselves to combat our own mental defilements. And if you're in a teaching role or you're a parent, sometimes you have to be firm with kids or students. But this is fierce in a good way, meaning you're just firm, encouraging people to do good, not to give in to other people's defilements, because we do that sometimes. Other people influence us, don't they? They take us in the wrong direction and say, oh, I can't be bothered meditating today, let's do something else. Or they encourage you to break the precepts. Often it's like that with drinking. Buddhists even have this problem, oh, let's go and have a drink just to relax. And then one thing leads to another. Maybe other precepts are broken when you get drunk, or certainly your mindfulness slips away. So sometimes you have to be firm, even fierce with a friend who's teaching you the wrong thing, encouraging you in the wrong direction. Sometimes we have to be fierce with ourselves, sometimes with other people. So it's just that symbolism of being firm, being fierce in the Dhamma practice. If you think about it, if you really want to train yourself to Nibbana, to give up all the mental impurities of mind, the greed, the anger, the delusion, well, you need a certain energy to do that. You need energy, you need effort, you need to be firm, you need determination or resolution, what we call adhitthana barami. All the people who become enlightened, they've got very strong determination. They don't give in easily to negative states of mind, to greed, anger, jealousy, delusion. They go the way of the Dhamma, and that needs a certain determination and resolution of mind. If somebody's rude to you, unkind to you, bullies you, harms you in some way, directly or indirectly, the easy way is to get back at them, seek revenge, punish them, hurt them, try and get back at them in some way because of your anger and your sense of self that is stirred up. But when you're practicing the Dhamma, you're trying to make your mind firm in the precepts, firm in mindfulness, firm in determination to give up defilements, not follow them. That's the way of the Buddha or the Bodhisattva. The way of following the defilements is the way of disaster, often characterized by Devadatta in the life of the Buddha. Devadatta is always following his greed, his anger, his jealousy, trying to hurt the Buddha, trying to split the Sangha, trying to do all kinds of things because of his rage against the Buddha. So we all have the Buddha and Devadatta within each of us. Within one mind, you have both. As long as we're unenlightened, our mind is affected by sankharas, different mental states that arise, pass away. So if you identify strongly with greed, anger, delusion, that's the way your mind becomes, isn't it? And you'll start thinking in that way, acting in that way, more like Devadatta. But if you identify with the good qualities, the mindfulness, the patience, the faith, the compassion, the wisdom, all the good qualities, and develop them as much as you can, then you're going the way of the Buddha. And this is a personal choice. And it's really that's how we are practicing. We're learning to follow in the direction of the Buddha rather than the opposite of the Buddha, the way of Devadatta or Mara. Sometimes it's characterized like that, the tempter figure in Buddhism. But the good and the bad are within one human mind, and it's up to us to take responsibility for developing, training this mind. The Buddha can only point the way, or Dhamma teachers can only point the way. It's our job to do the practice. So sometimes it's good to reflect, what is your aim in life? Are you aiming to really develop this Dhamma practice out of faith in the Buddha, Dhamma Sangha? Or are you kind of just settling for second best, just trying to get by? We all have that problem. We sometimes just are content to try and get by. Maybe we feeling a little bit complacent or lazy. We've already achieved something in our life. We've already got somewhere in our practice. We've done some dana. We've sometimes keep the precepts, sometimes do some meditation. But it's very easy just to sit back and say, well, I've done enough. Really, we need to also push ourselves to say, well, no, I haven't done enough. I've still got greed, anger, and delusion in my mind, affecting my mind. I have to practice more. These are the qualities of those with spiritual wealth. They don't give up. They don't give in. They don't quit. They keep going, whatever the obstacles. And however long it takes, they just keep going. Year of the Dragon, some people are very keen that it's going to be a successful year. Dragons mean power, mean energy, mean good things, but it's not sure yet, is it? You can think like that. I mean, just as a exercise in imagination. You say, oh, this year I'm going to be a powerful dragon. Good. Okay. I'm going to be doing more good. But you do get bad dragons as well, the good and the bad, just as you find in storybooks and movies. Even the life of Lumpur Man, you had the annoying Naga, who's like a dragon, the serpent god who was living in the cave, where he went into the cave, and the Naga kept annoying Lumpur Man, criticizing him, blaming him, telling him off, telling him he was a bad monk, telling him he was making too much noise when he did walking meditation. And what could be more peaceful than a monk walking barefoot up and down in a cave? And yet the Naga is so possessive of his cave, he's trying to get rid of Lumpur Man. So he just kept criticizing him and telling him, oh, you're so annoying, making all this noise, tramping up and down, taking up too much space in my cave. Everyone meets somebody like that, whether they're a Naga, a dragon, or just another person in the office. There'll always be someone like that who's possessive of their personal space. If you're at school, if you have a locker, people get possessive of their lockers, their seat, their desk, their table. If you're at work, it'll be your workspace or my workspace. Even meditators can become like the annoying Naga, and they get possessive of their meditation place in the meditation hall, their cushion, their spot. Once in a while, you see meditators arguing over their spot. This is my spot, not your spot. So Luang Por Man taught how to deal with annoying nagas. You know, just be very patient. As annoying as they are, you have to be that patient. Not give in to your anger, not give in to your frustration, and you carry on practicing with mindfulness. Even when they tempt you to be angry, you don't get angry. You don't give in to anger. You make your mind stronger than anger, wiser than anger. That's someone with spiritual wealth. They don't anger easily, even when they're poked and prodded and triggered and had all their buttons pushed all day long by an annoying naga. They don't give in. That's Luang Por Man. That's what an arahant is like. Someone with spiritual barami, with spiritual wealth. So sometimes nagas and dragons are just people who test us. They breathe a bit of fire on us, they poke us, they stick their claws into us to see whether we're going to get angry or give up. Giving up is another one, isn't it? People test you to see if you'll give up in your practice. Sometimes people poke you and see whether you're really strong in your faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. They might criticize the Buddhist teachings or tell you that you're not a good Buddhist. Sometimes even they tell you you're not a good monk. You're a bad monk. That is there like the bad dragon, the bad naga, just trying to poke you to see whether you're really strong in your faith, whether you're going to give up. Sometimes they do it on your deathbed or when you're very ill. They come to see whether you still have faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, maybe offer you another religious practice, another religion to help you out at that time when you're at your weakest. If you have spiritual wealth, though, even when you're ill, you don't give up your faith in the Buddha, you don't give up your sila, you don't give up your wisdom. You still know sankharas are impermanent, not self. Even if you have doubts, even if you have negative states of mind arise, you know, oh, it's just defilements. I'm not going to follow them, not going to give them any importance. If you have spiritual wealth, it will still help you when you're sick, you're tired, you're down. When things go wrong, you don't give up. You carry on, pick yourself up. Now, every spiritual practitioner will have their tests, good and bad people around them. So the good help pull us up and the bad try to pull us down. We have to make ourselves strong. It's not to take out your anger on the bad, it's just to know them as somebody who's deluded. Maybe they're deluded in their own way, so they try to take you away from Buddhism. You know, every family, if you're a practicing Buddhist, every family will have someone who's not a practicing Buddhist telling you that you're wasting your time, throwing that at you, oh, you're wasting your time. What can you learn from meditation, sitting there with your eyes closed? You have to think for yourself, don't you? You have to say, well, what have I learned from meditation? Maybe you've learned that, you know, all thoughts are impermanent, even those negative thoughts are impermanent. So you can let them go because they're impermanent. Maybe you've learned that what the Buddha taught is true. And the Buddha taught that, you know, if you follow the way of greed, anger, delusion, you suffer. If you let go of greed, anger, and delusion, whenever you do that, you don't suffer. Maybe you've learned that from your meditation. You can tell those people, the doubters or the ones who are telling you you're wasting your time. You can tell them what you've gained from your meditation. Maybe if you meditate regularly, you've gained more patience, more clarity, more calm. You've let go of all kinds of strong emotions that used to bother you. You can tell them that. Just like Luang Por Man taught the Naga, the annoying Naga. He said, oh, you know, you really need to change your attitude. He taught the Nagas that, you know, instead of annoying the monks, maybe just follow what they teach. Be more kind, more mindful, have faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, keep the precepts, meditate, train your mind, let go of your defilements. See, your defilements are not self, you can let go of them. Maybe we all have that person in our life who's sort of nagging us to stop doing good. Maybe they don't like us making offerings to charity or supporting monks or temples, waste of money. They're trying to get us to stop practicing generosity. Maybe they're trying to get us to stop living in a virtuous way and go out partying, or they're encouraging us to break the law in some way, or just to kill. Maybe someone's testing our relationship in our marriage, going to give up our marriage vows, or our relationship for another person. You get people like that in the world. They'll pull you out of a relationship, use you for a while, and then dump you. And you've lost both. The person who pulled you out of your relationship is not honest. They're just doing it for their own, following their own lust, their own delusions. And then you maybe break your own relationship by going with the new person, and you've lost your original partner. That happens every day in the world. People cheat on their partners and then get dumped by the one they cheated with. And then they sit there thinking, oh, what a waste of time. What did that? It was delusion. It was the delusion of lust, attachment, desire for romance, desire for something new. It's like that, isn't it? When you get caught into lust, it's very deluding. It fills your mind and it makes you forget the Dhamma. You lose your wisdom. So maybe the person who you're in a relationship with, your steady partner, or your husband, your wife, you forget about them because of your lust. And maybe somebody is new, enticing in your life, you go with them, and you forget the Dhamma. And then at the end of it, all you have is sadness that you broke your original relationship. Maybe that affects family, kids, relatives, friends. You go with a new person, and maybe the new person dumps you as well. You end up with nothing but a mind full of regret. Because that's what defilements do. They lead us to sadness, suffering, regret. We do the wrong thing, something that is going to come back on us. Sometimes it's because of the behavior of another person tempting us and we give in. Sometimes it's just ourselves. Can't blame anyone else. Someone with spiritual wealth, they're learning not to do that. They learn to bring up the strength of mind to not follow defilement, not to give in to the lust, to the anger, to the delusion, the greed that may lead them in the wrong direction. So if we're going to follow the Chinese astrology, the year of the dragon, it's a year to develop your barami, your faith, your practice of sila, your mindfulness, and your wisdom. Don't let those mental defilements trick you anymore. We've been tricked, deluded long enough. Every day they're tricking us to become more embroiled in the world, leading us to more attachment. And wherever there's attachment, there's suffering. The one who gives up attachment wins. This is the kind of unusual aspect of Buddhist teaching. You win in Buddhism by giving up, by losing attachment to things that cause you harm. Sometimes we say giving up, sometimes we say surrender, surrendering ego, surrendering attachment with a sense of self. Doesn't make sense at first, because in the world, the way of society and culture is always about building the sense of self up, being strong, powerful, having a big ego, being confident, being better than others, competing with others, winning out over other people in one way or another. The way of Dhamma is actually letting go of the ego, seeing that the real source of our suffering is having and attaching to a sense of self, ego. So when you look at someone with spiritual wealth, they won't have much ego or no ego at all. They've let go of it. And so they've won. They've won the competition between the Dhamma and the defilements by letting go of ego, letting go of greed, anger, delusion, because that's how ego expresses itself. Someone with no ego has no greed, no anger, no delusion. Their mind is empty of self because it's empty of those defilements. They've seen them for what they are and abandoned them, let them go, cut them off. So right effort in Buddhism is always to abandon the effort to abandon greed, anger, and delusion. And the Buddha sometimes used very strong language, again, fierce language, fierce like a dragon. He said, cut them off, kill them. Sometimes even use the word kill the defilements. You kill them with wisdom, not with anger or violence. You kill a defilement by seeing it for what it is, and knowing it as impermanent, not self, and the cause of suffering, so not to be followed. You kill greed by seeing, oh, greed is ugly, greed leads to more attachment, more suffering, so I'm going to give it up. And if you give up greed, then what's left is kindness and generosity. That's why we practice generosity. Every time we practice generosity, we're killing our greed a little bit more, cutting it off from the mind, changing the way the mind works for the better. When you let go of a little bit of your pride, your arrogance, your conceit, self-view, you're killing those defilements, as it were. You're cutting them off and replacing them with mindfulness, wisdom, compassion, all the good qualities. You kill anger with non-anger. If you introduce metta, karuna, kindness, compassion into your thinking, there's no room for anger or hatred at that moment. So you're killing it, you're letting it go, you're abandoning it. That's the way the Buddha killed defilements or cut them off. So it takes a certain determination to do that. You have to first of all identify the problems. Say, oh, anger causes me suffering. I'm going to let it go. I'm not going to give in to it. You make your mind firm. But you have to cultivate the right qualities, the mindfulness, the compassion, the clarity, so that you can see it as it's forming. Everyone says the same thing, don't they? Oh, I'm always getting caught out by anger. It comes out of nowhere. But when we say it comes out of nowhere, actually what what you mean is that you didn't see it coming. But if you train your eyes to look, you train in mindfulness and wisdom, wise reflection, you can see the trail leading up to the arising of anger in your life, whatever the situation is. You get to understand what triggers it. There'll be moments preceding anger, won't there? There'll be, you see something, you hear something, or you think of something. There'll be a small or a bigger feeling of tension in the body, the mind will have a slightly unpleasant feeling, and then you think of something based on that feeling, that perception that comes up with the feeling, a negative perception. Maybe it's a memory, or it's just the way you're looking at some experience in a negative way. And then your mind starts thinking. We call it mental proliferation. You start thinking based on that set of events. There's distinct events there that you can identify if you're more mindful, clearly comprehending what's going on in that moment. If you keep reflecting like this, you get to know, don't you? You get to know how defilements are triggered, what triggers your greed, what triggers your anger. You see the preceding moments, you see the situation, the different surrounding conditions that encourage anger to arise, and then you see the actual cause, your mind identifying, giving importance to the angry thought, the angry perception, the angry thought, giving too much attention to the angry thought. The more you think the angry thoughts, the more you hold on to them, the worse they'll become. Maybe you can do the opposite. When you're mindful, you can just ignore them. You say, oh, angry thought, let it go, ignore it. I'm not going to follow this. Even in a situation where you might be tempted to be angry because someone is doing something painful or harmful to you or to some other person, or it's a very frustrating situation that anyone would be tempted to be angry. But if you're mindful and on guard of watching over your mind, you can say, no, I'm not going to give in to angry thoughts here. So anger is overcome by non-anger. You keep doing that, then anger is, you're going to ignore anger as an experience more and more. Let it go, let it go. Gradually, it's not going to come up so often. You won't have so much strength. Same with greed, with lust, with anxiety and fear. All of these things we call mental defilements. They bother us and they come up seemingly out of nowhere because we feed them. We're feeding them, giving them importance in the mind, thinking about them, attaching to them. So of course they bother us. If you ignore them, then they stop bothering you. Sure, they'll come up because we've thought them before, they'll come up. But then when they come up, you just ignore them. Oh, that's a bit of anger. I've been angry before. Yeah, of course it comes up. But you don't have to indulge it, think of it, follow it. You just note it and let it go. Just like it's a visitor to the mind. It's not part of who you are. It's a visitor that you can let go from your mind. All forms of attachment, self-aversion, aversion for other people, sadness, regret, guilt, anxiety, worry, all the different kinds of suffering, they're all visitors to the mind that you don't have to feed or give importance to. Ajahn Chah used to say, just like a cat, stray cat. Everyone has a story of a stray cat that came to their back door, their kitchen. You feed them, you feed it a few times and it moves in, takes over. My own family had one. Didn't know where it came from, just give in to the little meows and feed it. And of course, then after 3 days, it moves in and it becomes boss of the house. That's like defilements, greed, anger, delusion. You feed them, they move in, take over your mind, and they become part of who you are because you've given in to them. They become the boss. Sometimes you have to be strong, not give in. That cat will find a home somewhere else, or maybe it already has a home anyway. So you don't have to feed every stray cat. You can just say, oh, I wish you well, stray cat, but you go on your way. I'm not going to feed you. I'm not going to keep you here. You have to do that with defilements. Don't feed them. Don't welcome them in. Just say, no, I'm not going to give in to you, and send it on its way. To do that, you need to be mindful. You need to be aware. You need to be clear on what you're doing. You have some wisdom, some insight, have some faith, have some understanding. Oh, these defilements are impermanent. They're not self. They can be let go of. The Buddha let go of them. Ajahn Chah let go of them. All these people with spiritual wealth around in the world, they've let go of them. Then you can let go of them. It's a kind of logical continuation of your thinking there. You say, oh, this person can let go of them, that person can let go of them, then I can let go of them. They can be let go of. So don't feed the cat, the stray cat. Don't feed the defilements, and your mind can be free of them. That would be wisdom in terms of spiritual wealth. We say somebody with wisdom, they don't feed the defilements, they don't encourage them, they don't give them importance or power. So their mind isn't overcome by greed, anger, and delusion. In Buddhism, we say that's the highest happiness, a mind free from greed, anger, and delusion. It comes about for cultivating this path. And maybe every time you see a picture of dragon, year of the dragon, whether it has a crystal in its mouth or not, or has some jewelry or not, doesn't matter. When you see the dragon, just remind yourself, oh, this is symbolizing the practice of cultivating faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, cultivating virtuous behavior, cultivating generosity, cultivating wisdom that sees defilements as things to be abandoned, not to be kept in your mind. And then you really can have a successful year of the dragon. Maybe you even become enlightened this year. So we wish you that. Well, I'll end the talk here, and if there's time, we can see if there's any questions to be answered.
Handamayang Dhammakataya Sadhu Karang Dadamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami